Morning, everyone. Happy Crime Week Day. And welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by my fellow Mirror columnist, Kevin Maguire. Morning, Kevin.
Morning, Susie. Morning, everybody.
Now, this is the People's Paper Review, so we want you to get into the comments, ask us your questions about whatever's burning a hole in your head. We will do our best to answer them for you. The best ones get one of these fantastic News Agenda mugs, on the topic of which, Francis, if you're watching, I messaged you after Monday's win, and you didn't reply. So it's in your message requests on Facebook. Please get in touch and we shall send you a mug if you give us your address. So what have we got today? Well, after that video was shown to about 11 million people last night, thanks to ITN, the BBC and Anton Deck, the Mirror has splashed a scoop by our brilliant colleague Pippa Crerar on a third Christmas party held in Whitehall last year in breach of the coronavirus rules. Now, Kevin, this is supposed to be Crime Week in the Westminster media grid, and I get the feeling that most of the government were at some kind of criminal party last year. So this probably isn't going to be the last one we hear about, but take us through it. What are the revelations? What does Pippa say?
No, and Susie, in Crime Week, it's worth remembering about 120,000 fixed penalty notices, fines were issued by police in England and Wales for breaches of COVID rules. You do wonder if they should be knocking on the big black door with a number 10 on it in Downing Street. But this party, uncovered by Pippa, Gavin Williamson, then the Education Secretary, 10th of December last year, had a gathering with wine and nibbles for people in the Department of Education. London at the time was under what was called Tier 2 restrictions, which meant social mixing indoors between households was banned. It's a breach of that quite clearly. But his line, the department's line, isn't to deny any party took place, which is what Downing Street does with, just lies about it. Said, well, it would have been better if it hadn't taken place. So they put their hand up and said it was a mistake. Context of the time, of course, not only was around 500, 600 people dying a day, but the Education Secretary was bullying schools and local authorities to remain open, have kids behind desks, despite soaring infection rates, which, of course, kids catch all sorts at school. They take it home, give it to parents, grandparents, other people. And there he was having drinks for his closest team. So it's not good for the government. It just keeps this scandal going, that the ruled have made rules, but they weren't following. They were just expecting the ruled to follow the rules, and they were gifting themselves privilege-free passes.
Yeah. On that topic, Mike says, morning, Mike, will all those handed £10,000 fines for breaching lockdown laws at the same time as the party at the PMs be entitled to refunds and having their convictions quashed? I'm going to say probably not, Mike, because the law is fairly clear and they would have been fairly and reasonably prosecuted and fined according to the law. The issue is whether those who are present at the party at the Prime Minister's are going to be issued a £10,000 fine and convicted for it, which is, of course, how it should be, because there aren't two classes of citizens in this country. Everybody, apart from the Queen, can be prosecuted and fined and convicted. So that's where we are. Now, as you were saying, Kevin, didn't the police on the doorstep realise, says Jason? Yeah, most of us, Kev, we probably wouldn't break the law if there were coppers outside the door at the time and they were taking notes and people's names of everybody who came in and out. And that is kind of what happens at Downing Street. But they were outside, of course, and the police weren't invited in for wine and nibbles, so far as we know. So perhaps they didn't realise quite everything that was going on inside the building. But as you said, Kev, this time there was roughly 500-600 people dying every day from the virus. Most of them were without their loved ones holding their hand. And you can guarantee that not a single one of them in the week before spent a load of time on WhatsApp organising a secret Santa, unlike this lot, and then giggled about it afterwards. Samantha says, why should we listen to them when they can't even listen to them? In case you've been under a rock for the past 24 hours, here is a video of the Prime Minister's press spokesman at the time snickering over the previous night's shenanigans.
I've just seen reports on Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not.
Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced. One more, and then one more.
Kevin, on the upside, I suppose, if you're Allegra Stratton, it is quite clear to see why she's no longer the Prime Minister's press spokesman, because she's completely unable to spin or lie her way out of it when she's confronted by something she knows full well is true. But today, every single minister has been pulled from the airwaves, even as they're supposed to be going out to talk about the booster programme, because not being embarrassed by questions from the likes of us is more important than protecting people from the virus, it would seem. But Kevin, if you were Keir Starmer and you were up there doing Prime Minister's questions today, what would your first question be? What would be your knockout blow? What would you say?
I would ask him initially, will you now confirm there was a party in Downing Street? And just put him on that hook, because he's going to have to admit it, and then he'll show Downing Street's lied for a week, and he is being incredibly evasive, deceitful himself, and then you will just work through, when did you know, what did you know, why have you been deceiving the British people? Are you going to now demand the police investigate and people who organised to get those £10,000 fines, which other people have had to pay? And you widen it out. You widen it out, the fact that it's quite clear now, I believe, from the evidence that's gone from a whistleblower to the Foreign Affairs Committee, that the Prime Minister prioritised bringing pen farthings animals out of Afghanistan over bringing back people. And he'll just run through the greatest lies of a Prime Minister who at times is incapable of telling the truth, whether it's on social care. People will still have to sell their houses if they're poor despite tax rises, what Keir Starmer's called the working class dementia tax. You would do the great train robbery up north. You would return, as Starmer did last week, with great effect. I thought that the promise of 40 new hospitals is another lie. Just go through it, because there is a breach of trust here. People are being conned. And Ant and Dec now mocking the Prime Minister regularly on I'm a Celeb. Last night, Dec saying, evening, Prime Minister, then pause for now, shows it is cutting through. People care about it because people made huge sacrifices during the COVID lockdowns. They, as you say, they couldn't visit loved ones who were dying. It wasn't just parties being cancelled, but there we see they were plotting on December the 21st in that rehearsal with Allegra Strand. They were plotting the cover-up, and they were laughing. They were laughing at people. They're laughing at you, at me, everybody listening. It's all for them. It's a big joke and it's a game and it's what they can get away with. And the Prime Minister sets the tone in Downing Street. He is a serial liar. He's lost 2 jobs in his previous lives for being utterly deceitful, and it's just infected the government now. And I think that matters. I think it really, really matters, because, as you say, why trust what they say on getting boosters and COVID restrictions and so on? And it does matter.
An untrustworthy person does not do trustworthy things.
Yeah.
As Susan says, so is this a fair society? How is it even allowed? I know a lady who lost both of her parents during lockdown and wasn't even allowed to visit, yet the elite are thoroughly entitled to live above the laws imposed upon us. I've got a friend who lost his mum due to COVID, wasn't allowed to see her at the end, and then spent Christmas with his dad alone at home on Zoom because no one wanted to risk infecting the dad, having lost his wife. So the widower was on his own all Christmas, while Allegra and Ed Oldfield and the Prime Minister and everyone else were having these events and laughing about it afterwards. And Mike says, how much damage will government sneering at the rest of us do to the messages about vaccines, boosters and future lockdown messages? There is some talk as well about whether or not this is a distraction from other stuff that's not going well. But I think, to be honest, this is the Ahmet says it's a distraction. I think, to be honest, Ahmet, this is the thing that is going to upset people more. All the lies that Kevin just outlined, which are very unreasonable, have not affected Boris Johnson's popularity rating. This is the thing that will has cut through already and is going to affect chances at the ballot box. Anne says, have they no shame? This made me weep for all the people who lost their loved ones. If I was Keir Starmer at PMQs today, Kev, I would stand up and I would say there were, whatever it was, 691 people who died on December the 18th while a party that happened, that you were at and you gave a speech at, so happened at the time, they died on that day without anybody with them. What would you say to their relatives? I mean, I wouldn't even ask them about it. I would just say, well, this is true. So now the next thing is, it's the relatives. It's the human impact of what he did that matters.
Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn used to use real people in question time. Different results, but Starmer, to humanise it, you've got to do the number of people dying on those days, and then you bring in some of the examples, because there are many people who are furious about it, who are losing loved ones, couldn't visit them in hospital, really suffering, while they were drinking, eating their nibbles, playing Secret Santa and wearing their Christmas jumpers in Number 10. And then we now see 3 days later plotting the cover-up. So, yeah, use the people, because it's about people. This is what it's all about. Politics is about people in there. It's not just some Westminster bubble game. It is about the country and 67 million people, how we live our lives, who's treated with respect, who is just treated with contempt. And I think it's an open goal. And Johnson's problem now, I think, is, well, the magic's certainly gone. When Ant and Dec mock him, they're laughing at him, not with him. But you can see his own personal ratings have gone through the floor, and Tory MPs are turning on him because they're thinking, no, this is Barnard Castle, Dominic Cummings,
Barnard Castle on speed. This is worse than Barnard Castle, I think. I mean, Barnard Castle happened, at a time in the first lockdown, and people were very, very cross, and they went out and started doing their own thing, started ignoring the government. But I mean, Samantha says there, this bit is on. It was at least Dominic Cummings. It wasn't the Prime Minister. This is the PM was at that party and gave a speech, and there seems to have been parties all across Whitehall while people were dying and everyone else was being told not to. It wasn't an isolated incident. It was a mindset, like you say, because Boris is at the top. The mindset of his government is his mindset, and they can. They don't get caught out, and if they do get caught out, they'll bluster their way through it. And it doesn't matter. Everybody still likes me, kind of thing. That's the attitude.
Yeah, Johnson was at the leaving do on November the 27th, I think it was. That's where he spoke. The party on the 18th, Downing Street, he wasn't there. But then you can see them doing the rehearsal now on the 27th. I think this episode, the video is, I think the comparison would be Matt Hancock invading the hands-face space of his assistant, breaking COVID rules when he was health secretary, because people can see it. Seeing is believing. We saw the picture of Matt Hancock, and we saw him looking around furtively in the video. And here you see the video. Now, it confirms there was a party despite all these number 10 denials, and it also shows they were plotting the cover-up to deceive people. So if it came out, they were trying to look at how you could cover it up and pretend it had never happened. And, a lot of people lent the Tories their vote in 2019, and he got a big 80-seat majority. Johnson on the back of about 43% of the vote. Most people didn't vote for him in truth, but a lot of people lent them their votes to give him that big seat majority. But they'll feel let down. They'll feel that he hasn't done what he said he would do. And this is sticking two fingers up at people during a pandemic that has been incredibly painful, individually and collectively. But in Downing Street, again, it's just that little elite think they're privileged and can do whatever they like.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's going to be the kind of thing where we have to sort of see perhaps who's actually going to end up resigning for it. Allegra Stratton doesn't have really an awful lot of a job now. She's the COP26 spokesman these days, and that's finished. So I would be amazed if she doesn't find somewhere else to be quite quickly, even though she's easily the most honest person out of all this, because she was the one who couldn't lie about it, even when she knew she was on video. But we've also got, this is a complaint's been made to the Met, which said it wouldn't investigate, even though it investigates everybody else for exactly this sort of thing a year after it happened. A complaint has now been made to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, which has referred it to the Met to see if I've got this right, to see whether the Met wants to refer it to the IOPC to investigate why the Met didn't investigate it. So I hope that's clear, everybody. Now, so whether the police ever get anywhere, we'll never know. Anne says, it's interesting to know who filmed that press conference and why it took a year. Are journalists sitting on it until necessary? Anne, if we'd had this a year ago, mate, no one would have sat on it. No one would have sat on it at all. This has been a humdinger for a year.
I think the video was sent to about a dozen people because they were selecting someone to front televised Downing Street press conference. So they were doomed. They never happened. Stratton was the person that was selected by Johnson to do it. She'd be out of her depth doing it. You could see that she's on £125,000 a year. I don't think she'll be on that for much longer in Downing Street. But that's what they were rehearsing it now. The video, there was rumours of a video and videos almost a year ago, but they were so limited in who had them. And I don't think any journalist had it and sat on it. It's just not like that. I think what's happened since is people in Downing Street and those who used to be in Downing Street and have left are turning on Johnson, the Prime Minister. They feel spurned. They're disgusted at what he does. And they're now more willing to speak, tell journalists what went on. And somebody has shown Paul Brand of ITV that video. And if you look at it, it appears he's videoed it from somebody's phone or laptop. So I don't think it's been forwarded to him. He's copied it, but it's utterly damning to see it like that. Yeah, so no one sat on it. Look, Susie, we'd have loved it, wouldn't we?
Oh my God, I'd have done this any time. Don't fret, Anne. We had a comment up there from Anne who said that she had spent last Christmas alone with COVID. How can anyone ever vote for this man again? I don't know. And you're not alone. There would have been lots of people in the same boat as you. And I think a lot of people voted for Boris Johnson because they wanted to get Brexit done. Arguably, that's as done as it's probably ever going to be, although it's not quite really done. And there'll be lots of perhaps movements within the party now to think about getting rid of him. Eric says this is an abuse of his position. There's so much anger out there. I can't see how he's tenable. What other chances do you think about the Tory party, the parliamentary party, which isn't a big fan of his, really, to start with anyway? What are the chances of them having some moves against him?
I don't think it'll happen in the short term. It's very hard to wrinkle out a prime minister. You need a sizable minority of Tory MPs to write letters asking for a leadership contest. And then he could face challenges within Westminster from their MPs. And there's no doubt that Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, and Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, are on manoeuvres and have got unofficial campaigns underway already. But still, it is difficult to remove a Prime Minister because a lot of people will think, right, let's just get to Christmas now. see what happens in January. Then you get into January, then begin thinking of Easter and then the summer. So look, do I think he's unfit for high office? Absolutely. I never thought he was fit for it. I've known him 30 odd years. He's a serial liar. He's a fantasist. Creates his own reality. He's dithering. He's incompetent. He's actually dangerous. But
as we've seen, seems to still be there. Christine says, "I'm grief stricken. We lost our beautiful mum to COVID in August after getting COVID, then long COVID. How dare they? We kept her safe. We as a family feel let down. We're heartbroken." Our comments on this are going absolutely madder than they have done probably for anything else, I think, over the course of these broadcasts that started after Barnard Castle. So it does seem to be something people really care about. But today, as the government is too shy to send out ministers to tell us that we need to get a booster, that's what the media round was supposed to be doing this morning. They've pulled all the ministers from those interviews. It turns out the booster rollout is in fact stuttering pretty badly. There's not enough volunteers. The vaccination centres we had last year were closed down after the first lot of jabs, and boosters are not getting in arms quick enough. Anyone who follows me on Twitter will know my last booster was in June because I've been moaning about it. According to the latest government guidance, I should be jabbed as of September, but there are no appointments at my local centre until the new year. I went to a walk-in centre and said, "Could you do me now?" And they said, "The government hasn't sent the guidance through yet. We can't officially do you." So no. Now, Kevin, this is stuttering because they have badly organised it and it's all happened late. But if this party business drags on, how can they expect people to take the virus seriously enough to get their boosters especially when it's difficult to get your booster?
Yeah, that's a real worry. I think we've all got to look after ourselves and be responsible and get boosters where you can. But the party in a way, and as I think Sleaze was 6 weeks ago now, I think it's symbolic of a very dysfunctional, creaking machine that just isn't working, and there seems to have been a lack of urgency in this vaccination program compared to the vaccination program at the beginning of the year, when it seemed to be a real oomph to it, because at the current rate, it's about 2.6 million jabs a week at the moment. Well, the target to hit their goals, you need 3.5 million, and they're just not there. People don't want to volunteer in the same way they did before. The NHS staff are absolutely exhausted. Every time you switch them to boosters, you take them away from doing something else. It's rather GPs who've given you a jab, they're not taking your blood pressure, for instance, and not checking if you've got diabetes. And it's a real mess, and it's a potentially dangerous mess. And in Downing Street, they're toying with the idea of not a lockdown, but maybe giving advice to work from home and so on, to try and slow the spread of the virus, because the infection rate is about 46,000 yesterday. So it's pretty, it's pretty.
And Tim Spector reckons it's probably 3 times worse than from the Zoe COVID study, because lots of people are asymptomatic and put it down to having a cold because they've been vaccinated. So
although the symptoms aren't as severe as was feared. But whenever Boris Johnson or a minister gets up now and wants to speak to the country and say, look, you're going to need to change how you live again, make sacrifices, people are going to be saying, what? We don't believe it. You don't do it. Why should we do it? And we get into a real mess as a country then, because you need to believe those at the top are telling basic truths.
You need to believe in the institutions of government, don't you?
Yeah, the authority of.
Yeah, and if we put someone in charge of the institution who is actually not organising or running those institutions properly, not appointing the right people to run the Foreign Office or the Afghan interpreter evacuation or anything else, then we will start to lose faith in the general message, which is that they are there to look after us. It's our country, it's our money, all the rest of it. I wrote a column at the start of all this saying you're going to have to look after yourselves because the government's not going to do it for you. And I'm very sorry to say it's been proven mostly right.
Well, what'll happen with Johnson? He'll get out of the gutter and go into the sewer. He'll be launching culture wars and basically demonising migrants and people coming across the channel in boats and telling lies about them. And most are, Home Office figures show, classed as refugees and entitled to claim asylum in the UK. I noticed last week when he was on the ropes over hospitals, and the fact he's come up with this fantasy 40 new hospitals. He just said somehow Labour would bring in uncontrolled immigration, which is just a lie. But he'll go low and low and lower and lower. He'll soon be near the middle of the earth.
Yeah, well, we do still have some freedom of movement. It's called the ballot box. And you can express your views there. Who knows when he's going to call an election? If he starts feeling really shaky, he might call one. You never know. Now, keep asking us your questions. What were you doing on December the 18th last year? What were you doing when Gavin Williamson was having his Works cheese and wine party? How do you feel about the booster jab and following any future restrictions that may come in the new year, perhaps, or after Christmas? Let us know, and we'll wrap those questions up at the end. But first, there is some good news in the world. There is something nice happening, and here it is. Now, most people who win £12 million on the Euro Millions might be forgiven for spending it on a nice house and going on permanent holiday. I think I probably would be very tempted to do that. But Nigel and Sharon Mathers, who won in 2010, have instead been splashing some of their cash on good works. And this week, they were joined by an X Factor choir to deliver a Christmas hamper to war hero Tom Beavers, who served with the Desert Rats under Monty in the Second World War. They sang Christmas carols for him. His wife died 28 years ago, so he's on his own at Christmas. They sang carols for him. They gave him some treats. And it's just a reminder, I think, Kevin, for us and for any friends or donors of the Tory party, that money is there to do good things with, not just to line your nest with. And it's nice to see that most people still think that.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel and Sharon, for putting the rest of us to shame. My mum always says, you need a good deed a day. These people are great because you're right. They've had fortune smiled on them. They got a lot of money, 12.4 million. Instead of just spending it on themselves and those closest, they do good work. And the guy, Tom, and as you say, lost his wife 20 years ago, utterly thrilled. He was tearful. He was singing along the Silent Night with them. He used to be able to do it in German, apparently, as well. And I just think it really is nice. And we've spent a while discussing really horrible behaviour at the top of the government and the Prime Minister just not telling the truth. I think in Britain and most countries of the world, the vast majority of people are very decent. I think we should remember that.
Yeah, people who don't run governments are usually...
Some people who run governments, though, are all right. They're not all bad. I don't think everybody in Downing Street is bad. I think the Prime Minister is terrible.
They have their moments, but I do tend to think that anybody who wants to run for public office should be automatically disqualified for it. Just like, going in to buy a BMW, they should go, you want to come in and buy a BMW on the forecourt? So have your driver license, please. Just take it away. That's it. You've automatically disqualified yourself. Now, Mike says, will these messes about the party at the PMs and prioritising animal airlifts over people in Kabul have an impact on the North Shropshire by-election? Owen Patterson's seat is up for grabs, having been done for sleaze. So how's it looking? We know that there was a by-election in Kent last week and the Tories stormed it quite comfortably. So how's Shropshire looking?
Yeah, I think the Tories are more worried about North Shropshire. The by-elections a week tomorrow on the Thursday. The Prime Minister paid a visit, although given his current reputation, I'm not sure that really helps. But the word on the ground, there is some backlash. What happened in Old Bexley and Sidcup is the local MP was well respected, died. There's sleaze up in North Shropshire, so people are kicking back against that. If the Tories hold on to the seat, it could be because Labour and the Liberal Democrats split the opposition vote rather than coalescing around one candidate. Labour finished second there 2 years ago, but the Liberal Democrats did well recently in local elections. And I think if I was living in that constituency, I think I'd tactically vote for the Lib Dems against the Tories, because I think the Lib Dems have the best chance of winning.
Yeah, well, we shall have to wait and see, won't we? Maggie says, what's the point in getting a booster if it doesn't work with the new strain? What we've got at the moment, okay, Maggie, is a country that is mostly Delta strain, which is much more infectious than the original Wuhan strain. So if you get your booster, I'm getting mine next week. If you get your booster, you're protecting yourself against the strains that we've got right now. and most of that is Delta. Some of it is the Alpha variant, but most of it's Delta, and it will protect you. It will mean that you get a heavy head cold if you get it, probably. But Omicron, we think maybe about 1,000 cases. There's around 300 actually known, and we don't know how the vaccine is going to work with that. But by the point at which that sort of doubles and doubles and the cases overtake, it could well be in a few months' time that Omicron is the biggest case in the country. But hopefully by that point, the new vaccines, which they're already started making, will be ready. So fingers crossed. You might have to get a booster now against Delta, but in the new year, there may be some more vaccines against Omicron if we need them, and we don't know yet at the moment. So that's why you get your booster.
Yeah.
Amy says, what about all the contracts worth millions of pounds of public money they've given to their mates? Most of it not fit for purpose. There's so many crimes against morality and reason and judgment, Kevin, that it's difficult to pin it down. I don't actually want there to be a COVID inquiry in the long run, because I think it's going to last the rest of our lives. There's so much stuff to go through. And we've known about these contracts for ages, and that didn't dent the government's popularity. It didn't change anything. It didn't change their behaviour either. They're still withholding documents that they're supposed to be producing about it. So, I mean...
Now, it's a bit like Trump in the US, isn't it? Like Trump called Johnson Britain's Trump, and Trump retained sizable support. He thinks he's going to run again. Johnson's doing it here. And if people are quite happy to be conned and deceived and cheated and abused, and to allow corruption to be rampant, to look for measures to ban protests that'll try and turn the UK into a one-party state, then, well, we'll get it, won't we? That's what we'll get. But I think the decent majority are beginning to get fed up.
Yeah, well, Diana says, why are there no longer class bubbles in all schools? My son has health issues. So far, he hasn't had COVID, but members of the class have. No notifications from the school to parents, just parents talking to each other to alert about COVID cases. My child's school was the same, Diana. They were in bubbles for a while, and then my daughter came home and suddenly announced she was playing with year 2 in the playground. I went, what? And it turned out, she said, well, I haven't got bubbles anymore. And no one had told... The school didn't notify anybody. It just seems to have been an order from on high that they don't need bubbles. This is the kind of thing that might come back in the new year, I suppose, Kevin, along with working from home.
No, I think that's right. You could. I don't think we'll get a lockdown in the way we had before, but certainly measures to try and stop the spread of the virus will be considered. And it's, where does the party scandal leave the government? Does it feel it now can announce tougher measures, or will it be accused of hypocrisy? If it announces tougher measures, will people follow them? Now, there's a certain weariness, but then will people also think, hang on, why are you bringing this in? Is it a distraction, or are you bringing it in and you're not going to follow these measures, so why should we? And this is why these scandals really, really matter, because it comes down in a sense to the personality, the values of those at the top. And are they governing in the interests of everybody in the nation, or are they just having a bit of a laugh and doing whatever they want?
What a note to end on. Thanks, Kevin, for making it all
Happy Christmas.
Thank you. Well, she said thank you, Boris Johnson, Gavin Williamson, Allegra Stratton, and the staff of Downing Street for yeah, thank you for joining me, Kevin. Thank you, everyone, for taking part. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all your questions. There will be another edition of the News Agenda next Monday, when hopefully, who knows, maybe there'll have been some resignations and we'll be able to move on a bit. But if you get an invite for your booster, go and get it. And remember to look at your, watch your 6, look after yourselves, because no one else is going to do it for you, it feels like. See you all on Monday, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.